You got in your car this morning, turned a key, pressed a pedal, and moved 40 miles an hour without using a single muscle. 100,000 years ago, that same trip would have taken 2 full days of walking barefoot through territory that could kill you. No road, no path, no sign telling you what's ahead. For almost all of human history, getting anywhere meant risking everything. And you had nothing to carry you there except your own 2 feet. Today, you can fly across the planet in a day. You can order something from the other side of the world, and it shows up at your door. Movement is so easy now that it's basically invisible. But for roughly 300,000 years, every single journey a human being ever took happened at walking speed. And that one limitation shaped everything about how we lived, what we ate, who we married, and how much of the world we ever got to see. So, let's start at the beginning. Start with your feet. That's all you had for most of your existence. Humans aren't fast. A cheetah hits 70 miles an hour. A horse holds 30 for miles. You max out around 15, only for a few seconds before your lungs give up. But speed was never the point. Endurance was. Walk 20 miles today. Sleep. Walk 20 more tomorrow. And keep doing that for weeks. No other creature on the planet can pull that off. Your feet have built-in springs, arches that load and release energy with every stride. Your Achilles tendon works like elastic, storing force so your muscles don't carry the full load. A ligament up the back of your neck keeps your head stable while your body moves underneath it. And you're carrying roughly 2 million sweat glands, letting you keep moving under the sun while every other big mammal out there overheats and stops. You weren't built to be fast. You were built to never stop. In 1978, a paleoanthropologist named Mary Leakey found something buried in Laetoli, Tanzania, a trail of footprints pressed into hardened volcanic ash 3.6 million years ago. 2 people, walking upright, side by side. It's the oldest direct proof of bipedal walking ever recovered, and if you looked closely, those prints would look almost identical to your own. For millions of years afterward, that was the entire transportation system humanity had. 2 legs. Nothing else. And somehow, that was enough to eventually put humans on every continent on Earth. Roughly 70,000 years ago, groups of humans started walking out of Africa. Not as one big exodus, this played out across thousands of years, generation after generation, each pushing a little further into land nobody from their line had ever seen. They crossed into the Middle East, spread through Asia, reached Europe, pushed into Siberia, crossed a frozen land bridge into Alaska, and moved south through the Americas. Around 15,000 miles covered, with no idea what if anything was waiting at the end. And here's the part that rarely gets mentioned. They weren't wandering aimlessly. Archaeologists have dug up obsidian tools hundreds of miles from the nearest volcano. Seashells turned up deep inland. Amber has been found traded across entire mountain ranges. These weren't accidents. People were deliberately covering huge distances to trade, to link up with other groups, to reach resources they already knew existed because word had traveled ahead of them. This wasn't drifting. This was networking, on foot, thousands of years before writing existed. But walking has one flaw. It works fine until something blocks your path. A desert, you can cross. A mountain pass, you can climb. A river is different. A river just stops you. And rivers cut through nearly every migration route, every hunting ground, every trade path. For most of human history, water was a wall. Find a shallow spot to wade through, or turn back, those were the only options. Until, somehow, humans figured out how to beat that wall entirely. In 2003, archaeologists on the Indonesian island of Flores found stone tools roughly 800,000 years old. The catch? Flores has never once been connected to the mainland, even at the lowest sea levels of the ice ages. At least 12 miles of open water separated it from the nearest land, which leaves only one explanation somebody made that crossing on purpose. We don't know how. Wood rots. Bamboo breaks down. Whatever carried them is long gone. But the tools are proof the crossing happened anyway. The earliest boats probably weren't boats at all, they were accidents. A log floating in a stream. A bundle of reeds lashed together to survive a crossing. Nobody engineered the first raft. Somebody grabbed whatever was floating nearby and didn't drown. That accident was the real breakthrough. What came after it, though, was completely intentional. About 65,000 years ago, humans crossed from Southeast Asia into Australia, a journey requiring at least 60 miles of open ocean. You can't see Australia from the departure point. You don't drift there by chance. Someone built a vessel that could stay afloat, aimed it at water they couldn't see the far side of, and started paddling with zero guarantee that land existed on the other end. That's not survival instinct. That's a decision. The oldest boat ever recovered is the Pessie canoe. Pulled from the Netherlands, a single hollowed-out log, about 10,000 years old. But the actual technology stretches back far earlier than that single surviving example. Humans were already settled on islands they had no way of reaching on foot, tens of thousands of years before that canoe was ever carved. Then, starting around 3,000 years ago, the Polynesians did something almost unbelievable. They crossed the Pacific, the largest ocean on the planet. They built double-hulled canoes, loaded them with food, livestock, and entire families, and sailed thousands of miles, guided by nothing but the stars, ocean swells, bird flight patterns, and the color of clouds near land. No compass. No chart. Just observation sharp enough that modern navigators still study it. They landed on Hawaii, Easter Island, New Zealand, every livable island in the Pacific. Some single voyages covered over 2,500 miles of open water with nothing in between. Walking handled land. Boats handled water. But one problem stayed unsolved. You can walk 20 miles a day, not while hauling a 200-pound animal you just brought down. For most of human history, the real limit wasn't distance. It was weight. You could only move what your body could carry, and that ceiling sits around 40 to 60 pounds before your body breaks down under the load. So humans started cutting corners. The first workaround was drag and kill something large, lay it on a hide, haul it back to camp. We know this happened because archaeologists have found wear patterns on ancient hides that only appear when something heavy has been dragged a long way. Then someone improved on it, the travois. 2 long poles lashed into a V, with a platform stretched between them. You drag the narrow end, the wide end carries the weight, spreading the load out. Suddenly one person could move over 100 pounds solo. The wild part is that the travois might be one of the oldest transport tools humans ever built. But being just wood and leather, almost none survived to be dug up. We only know it existed because people in the Americas were still using it when Europeans showed up thousands of years later. The real breakthrough in moving weight wasn't something you could build, it was something you could befriend. About 15,000 years ago, humans domesticated dogs, the first animal partnership we ever formed. One of their earliest jobs was hauling loads. In the Arctic, dogs pulled sleds across ice and snow. One dog could move around 45 pounds. A team of 6 could drag a family's whole camp. But dogs are small. Humans needed more muscle. About 5,500 years ago, on the steppes of what's now Kazakhstan, humans domesticated the horse. We know this thanks to the bowtie culture archaeologists found bit wear on horse teeth, and traces of mare's milk baked into ancient pottery. These weren't people hunting horses for meat. They were riding them, milking them, building entire lifestyles around them. And that changed everything. For roughly 300,000 years, the fastest a human could travel was about 4 miles an hour walking pace. On horseback, you could hit 30. In a single generation, the human world shrank by a factor of 8. Journeys that used to take weeks now took days. Messages traveled faster, trade routes stretched further, and warfare changed for good, because an army on horseback could reach you before you knew it was coming, and horses weren't the only ones recruited. Donkeys hauled cargo through deserts, camels crossed the Sahara, reindeer dragged sleds through Arctic snowfields, llamas carried loads over the Andes. Wherever humans settled, they found whichever animal fit the terrain and put it straight to work. But one invention was still missing, and it took an absurdly long time to show up. Here's a fact that doesn't sound real until you sit with it. Humans had crossed every ocean on Earth before anyone invented the wheel. The oldest known wheel was found in the Ljubljana marshes of Slovenia, dated to roughly 5,200 years ago. That's it. Boats go back at least 10,000 years, probably far longer. Horses were domesticated 5,500 years ago. Humans had sailed to Australia a staggering 65,000 years before the wheel existed. The wheel wasn't humanity's first major breakthrough in transport, it was one of the last. And it didn't even start out as a transportation tool. The earliest wheels were built for pottery, a spinning disc used to shape wet clay. At some point, somebody looked at that spinning disc and tipped it on its side, wondering what would happen if you put something on top of it. The first wheeled vehicles were rough, solid wood wheels, heavy, prone to cracking on uneven ground, and useless in mud. Honestly, a horse without a cart was often faster than a horse dragging one behind it. Then, around 2000 BC, someone engineered the spoked wheel lighter, stronger, and dramatically faster. That single upgrade gave the world chariots, speed and cargo capacity in one package. Roads followed soon after. The earliest paved road on record was laid down around 4000 BC. Once wheels, roads, and horses were all working together, humanity finally had something that resembled an actual transportation network. Trade exploded. Empires became possible. Armies and supplies could move hundreds of miles without the entire operation collapsing along the way. Wheels, horses, and roads working together are the combination that built every civilization you've ever studied. So here's the whole arc. For 300,000 years, humans had nothing but their own legs and still walked across the entire planet. Then they hit water and figured out how to float across it. They needed to carry more than their bodies allowed, so they learned to drag it. Then they engineered a frame to spread the weight. Then they partnered with animals. Then they mastered the horse, and the world shrank overnight. Then they invented the wheel, and it shrank again. Every single one of those breakthroughs took thousands of years to arrive, and every one was built directly on top of whatever came before it, solving problems that would have sounded impossible to anyone living just a generation earlier. Now you sit in a metal box on a paved road doing 70 and call it a commute. You cross an ocean in 6 hours and get annoyed the Wi-Fi is slow. You've got a device in your pocket that can summon a car to your exact spot in 4 minutes, and you're irritated it takes 5. Your ancestors walked 15,000 miles barefoot across continents they couldn't name, toward places they'd never seen because staying still meant dying. We solved the problem of distance so completely that we forgot it was ever a problem. Every highway, every airport, every stretch of train track on this planet exists because 300,000 years ago, someone looked at the horizon and started walking. They didn't know where they were going. They went anyway. And that's the most human thing there is.